talking about the very best ways to treat parasites. Maybe you're dealing with all kinds of symptoms. Sometimes it starts with gut issues, then we can have cognitive, like memory issues, brain fog, fatigue, debilitating fatigue. We can have allergies, waking up at night, insomnia. Then we can start having neurological symptoms. Maybe we've tried all kinds of things to get well. We've tried different types of diets, we've tried supplements, we've tried exercising, and nothing is really making a difference. Well, I would like to ask you a question. Have you considered that parasites might be causing the horrible symptoms that you're dealing with? And possibly, if you've been diagnosed with a disease, could the parasites be causing the disease like multiple sclerosis or other disease that you're dealing with? Well, I'm here to tell you that yes, that is usually the biggest cause of our symptoms is a disruption to our microbiome. And so this is what we're talking about today, and it's really important because this is how I have been able to recover from multiple sclerosis over 35 years ago. I was a healthy young mom, young children, and I was just enjoying being a mother. And then one day I lost all vision in my left eye, just randomly. And I had been healthy all my life. And within 3 days, I was seen by a specialist. I was referred to an MS clinic at a university hospital. And I was told I had this debilitating, incurable disease that would take my life away. And they were very wrong. Unfortunately, they don't know much about parasites, and not much has changed 35 years later. So today, what I'm going to do is share with you the very important steps you need to take to recover from parasites. I'm also going to talk about challenges that people run into when they're treating parasites. And I'm going to talk about the best parasite treatments. If we haven't met, my name is Pam Bartha, and I'm the author of Become a Wellness Champion and the founder of Live Disease Free. I was sick, really, really sick 35 years ago. I was not able to take care of my young children or my husband. I was just flatlined on the couch. I was fortunate that my mom could step in and help me. And I really, really cried out to God because I did not understand how you could go from being a totally healthy person to having this incurable disease that was going to make me end up in a wheelchair permanently, possibly in a care home eventually. And my prayers were answered, and I do a lot of asking, a lot of begging for help. And over the years, we've learned some of the main parasites that are causing, especially multiple sclerosis, but other chronic diseases also. And today we're going to talk about a little bit of misconceptions, first of all, like why our doctors don't believe that we have parasites. And we're going to go into the challenges, to the step-by-step plan, and what kind of symptom improvements we can expect when we follow the right plan. So my journey again began 35 years ago, and when I was diagnosed, parasites were not on the radar. Like, we didn't have this big health revolution like we have right now. And so I wanted to find out from you, maybe you were diagnosed years ago. Did you ever consider parasites might be what's causing your disease? I didn't even know like that. I do remember that we had a dog, and the dog had puppies, and that my dad dewormed the dog, and we saw a whole bunch of worms coming out of the puppies. That's about it for what I remember about worms and deworming, living on a farm. We even had horses. I don't think we even dewormed our horses, which is not good. But this is really a myth that parasites are not in the developed countries. They really, really are. And in fact, the CDC reports that there are millions of people in developed countries, including the US and Canada, that suffer from parasitic infections like toxoplasmosis, Chaga disease, neurocysticercosis, and many other parasites. And if parasites aren't a problem, then why do our veterinarians deworm our pets, right? If there are parasites in our pets, where are they coming from if they're not in the developed countries? So the truth is that parasites are all around us. They are in our pets, they are in our soil, they are on our food. we don't have to be paranoid about it, but we do have to understand that it's just part of life. Parasites are part of life, and they are in our environment in every country in the world. So what is a parasite? A parasite is not just a worm. It's any microbe that lives inside of us and causes us harm, right? So it could be a bacteria, it could be fungi, protozoa, which are single-celled parasites, could be worms. So those are the four main categories of parasites, but like the worms could be up to 3 feet or longer, or they could be so small you can't see them with your eye. They can be flat, they can be round. The single-celled parasites could be things like Giardia. You may have heard of Giardia before. Toxoplasmosis, Babesia is another common one. Bacteria, like the one that causes Lyme disease, but also other ones like E. coli, if we get a lot of bladder infections, chlamydia, pneumoniae, Bartonella. There's many different bacteria that are parasitic, that are pathogens. They cause us harm. They need us to survive. And then the fungi. So we know that there are different types of yeast. Candida is something that a lot of people have heard about. And then there's Aspergillus. There's some different molds. And all of these different types of parasites, they live inside of us and they cause harm to us. They need us to survive. So unfortunately, our standard of care, they do not have good tests to identify these infections in our body, these parasites. They also haven't been trained to recognize. Even our integrative practitioners, I just had one of my students wanting to get energy tested by an integrative practitioner, and he's like, why do you think you have parasites? And he just looked at him like, our students know more about this than even integrative doctors that they're working with. So unfortunately, it doesn't matter if it's an integrative practitioner or if it's standard of care medical practitioner, they haven't been trained to identify parasites. They don't know what to look for. They don't have good tests. They have been trained that parasites are only an issue in third world countries. They're not going to be a problem in your patients. So it's dismissed. And the whole skill of identifying and treating parasites has been lost, which is really unfortunate because this is why we have such an epidemic of chronic disease in society today. And I believe, this is just my own personal opinion, that it's just too coincidental that there was this shift from our healthcare where we focused, primarily the doctors believed that different diseases were caused by infections, and then all of a sudden, mid-1950s, 1960s, there's a group that started to really fund our medical system, and then all of a sudden they really promoted autoimmune disease, and so now everything is autoimmune disease. Everything is like, well, it's just your immune system is acting up for no reason, and so we just need to shut it down. And so, or to suppress it, I should say, with immunosuppressive maintenance drugs we take forever. So that's the dilemma that we're dealing with. So my personal journey, again, at the age of 28 years old, I was healthy, I was slim all my life. I lived on a farm. I used to go horse riding. I played volleyball. I was a mom. I was eating healthy, having children. I had 2 young children under the age of 2. And suddenly one day I started losing vision in my eye. My left eye got a black spot and it grew bigger and bigger very quickly. Went to see an eye specialist right away. And that specialist said, oh, that's a very serious case of optic neuritis. I think I need to refer you to an MS clinic. So he referred me to the UBC MS Hospital Clinic, which is one of the best MS hospital clinics in Canada. It's on the West Coast. And there, the expert did all his testing, and he diagnosed me with multiple sclerosis. So I also had fatigue. I also had a little bit of tingling in my legs and down my arm that I had, but I just ignored that. I didn't know what that was. But by the time that I had the optic neuritis, I had terrible, terrible headaches, extreme fatigue, and I had the tingling, and they could pick up a little bit of weakness in my legs. And so with all of that, he gave me the diagnosis of multiple sclerosis, and I'm like, what is multiple sclerosis? He made a point to tell me that there's absolutely nothing you can do to change the course of your life, that you will be completely disabled in time. And I left his office completely devastated. Like, how is this possible? How can you be a healthy person all your life and then suddenly you have this mysterious incurable disease taking over your body? Like, it didn't make any sense. I was devastated. I thought that my life was over. My husband drove me home through the mountain pass. I can still remember to this day staring out the window, bawling my eyes out, thinking like, how am I going to take care of my 2 young kids? And what a burden I would be to my husband. He was going to have to take care of me his whole life and take care of the family, and I wouldn't be able to contribute, and I would be a burden. It was just awful. I got home and my mom stepped in to help because I couldn't take care of myself or my kids. I just laid on the couch, just totally wasted. And then I cried out to God. I just begged him for help. And I honestly believe that he heard my cry. He has answered my prayers many times. I'm not special. I just ask, right? I do ask. I do love him. I love the Lord. But I do ask. And he promises that he will answer our prayers. So why not ask, right? And so my mother-in-law gave me a book on integrative health. And that was like the only book I received. I didn't receive any other books. I didn't even have the internet in my house at that time. I didn't even have a computer. And that book opened my eyes to a whole new world that I did not know existed. That book was written by a medical doctor who believed that MS and other chronic diseases were caused by infections, by parasites in the body. They focused a lot back then on Candida. That was pretty much what they focused on. They did believe in other parasites, but they couldn't see them. They didn't know how to treat them. They didn't know how infested we were. And so then I would go to the health food store. We had the Alive magazine once a month that would come out, and there would always be a book review. I'd go and quickly look to see, like, is there another book written by another doctor? Oh, yes. So I found 4 different books written by medical doctors that were talking about how infections, parasitic infections, caused diseases like MS. So when I read all of that, I decided at that point to take a different path because the neurologist gave me no hope for a cure. He said I would be completely disabled. He warned me about snake oil cures that people would tell me about. And he said, as the expert, I'm telling you, there's nothing you can do. You are going to be bedridden in time. So when I read those books by other medical doctors, I thought, no, this makes more sense to me. I'm going to follow this path. And the rest is history. So since then, I have been living over 35 years free of multiple sclerosis. My kids are all grown up. They're married. I was able to raise them. I was able to be a partner to my husband, still am, and had the amazing privilege now to have 7 grandchildren, 1 more on the way in midsummer. So that'll be 8 grandchildren. And we have a lot of fun. Like, we are really active with them. We were tobogganing just a couple of weekends ago, and they're all young, like 10 and under. So like, they're like cats. They're running in different directions, and you're carrying them and you're running up the hill, going tobogganing. Those are the things I love to do. And this is why I do this work, is because I want you to see that there is hope for you, that all these horrible symptoms you're dealing with, they're because of parasites. You are a healthy person. It's not your body is turning on you. Like some of us, we just lose hope and we're like, oh, it's the luck of the draw. You know, I've got this body that is attacking my own tissue, my nerves, or my immune system is attacking my nerve tissue, or my whatever tissue, my joints. There's nothing I can do. That's not true. You are a healthy person. You just have an infection that our doctors can't pick up. So today we're going to talk about how to treat that, because it's not simple. It's not easy. It's simple. We follow simple steps, but we do have to use strategy, because it's very similar to, I always talk about your lawn. Like if you don't take care of your lawn, and it gets too dry and some of the grass dies out, you get weeds moving in, right? And it's not just dandelions, you get all kinds of weeds. And so you're not going to just treat one type of parasite inside of you. It's going to be multiple types of parasites. So I have been able to live over 35 years MS free. I have developed a program that we've helped thousands of people all over the world, helping them to recover from multiple sclerosis and other chronic diseases. We're in over 15, probably closer to 20 countries by now. And we have a system that is proven, a system that has helped people recover from incurable diseases by treating the root cause, which is parasites. And the reason that we have so much success is, first of all, by the grace of God, and secondly, because we do use strategy. There's never going to be a one-size-fits-all parasite treatment plan for everybody, unfortunately. And we have to understand how entrenched they are in our body, how comfortable they are. We have to understand what we're dealing with so that we have a realistic expectation of how we can recover, what we need to do to recover. And so why does our medical system ignore parasites? Well, I've kind of mentioned that already. There frankly is no money. There is no money in treating parasites. In curing people of parasites, we would not have a multi-trillion-dollar healthcare system. It's as simple as that. That is the biggest cause of cancer, of all the autoimmune diseases, including chronic diseases like multiple sclerosis. They're all infectious diseases. I've done videos on like cancer, like all the parasite drugs. They treat different types of cancers. So because there is so much more money in these disease-modifying drugs, like it can be over $100,000 per year just for one drug, never mind the MRIs and the doctor's visits. They are not giving this information to our doctors. It's being hidden from us. And if you live in a country like Canada, it's virtually impossible for doctors to treat parasites. You have to get a stool test done. The stool tests are lousy. They're not going to tell you which parasites you have. And then your doctor will say, you don't have parasites. And it's like, no, you have very poor tests. And they don't know that your symptoms are caused by parasites. So this is why we are suffering, why we have an unsustainable healthcare system. So the plan, the best way to recover from parasites, to treat parasites, is using the Live Disease-Free plan. And this is a proven plan. It has many people have used it. It's been fine-tweaked for years and years as to what is the best for people, what helps them the most. We are still continuing to learn because of our amazing wellness champions. But this plan, this system, comes from decades of experience in treating like many students, or the students are treating themselves, but working with them. I'm a teacher by trade, a health coach, or a health educator. I'm not a healthcare professional, so I'm not giving medical advice. And for this video, this live event, please understand that I am not telling you what you would need, what you should do. This is something you can discuss with your doctor. If you need support from us, we would be very happy to help you, to guide and direct you, to make sure you get access to the right practitioners, the right treatments, that you're treated properly. But that's not the job that I do. I'm not a doctor and not a healthcare professional. So step number 1 of the diet, of the Live Disease-Free plan, is to follow the Live Disease-Free diet. All the guidelines for this diet can be found on our website, livediseasefree.com, livediseasefree.com. And you look in the main menu, click on that at where you see research, and you will find the Live Disease-Free guidelines. They are free for you to use. I would encourage you to go through that, because this has been life-changing for a lot of people. You can have a lot of symptom improvements by going low carb, down to about 30 total grams of carbs per day. The rationale behind this diet is that for parasites, their favorite source of energy, their favorite source of food are carbohydrates and simple sugars. So when you decrease their food, they become more quiet. They're producing less toxins, they're less active. Your immune system is not working as hard. That means the inflammation starts to go down, and people have tremendous symptom improvements in things like their bladder function, first of all, is hugely improved. Then they're sleeping better at night. Then they wake up feeling more rested. Then their brain fog is improving. Then their strength is improving. So people can have less or no spasticity. People's sleep apnea machine, they don't need to use, they can turn it down slowly working with their doctor. So there are so many benefits to eating low carb. It's still super nutritious, lots of nutrients, it tastes good, it makes you feel satisfied, but it just does not feed the parasites as much. So that is really important. So this is part of getting ready to treat. We call the prep phase. So the diet and supporting the body are part of the prep phase. We want to feel better before we start to treat. If you have inflammatory bowel disease, make sure to just avoid vegetables that don't agree with you, and it's absolutely fine to cook your vegetables, and then you'll tolerate them. The ones that are on the cheat sheet, you'll see there is the Live Disease-Free cheat sheet. Step number 2 is to support the body. So first of all, we get the carbs lower. We're working down to 30 total grams of carbs. Then we want to make sure that we're having daily bowel movements, that we're sleeping at least 8 hours per night. We look at our blood work. We support physiology that needs it. We go in our home and we decrease the wireless radiation. We look for mold, get rid of mold. So there's a checklist that we do that we just check off. And with all of these steps, people are feeling a lot better. What's so shocking is just from this prep phase, people can feel so much better than any supposed improvement from an MS drug. And that is the truth. So a lot of people just take the MS drugs. They don't feel any better. They're just taking them because they're kind of scared. They just don't, they think they should take them. But when you actually decrease the carbs and support the body, you will have more symptom improvement, way more symptom improvement than any drug out there for MS, because none of them are treating the parasites. They're all suppressing your immune system. That is why. I'm not against pharmaceuticals, but it's just, what are they doing in the body? They are suppressing things. They are managing your symptoms. They are not dealing with the cause. So those 2 steps are the prep phase, getting you ready to treat. So by the time your carbs are lowered, you're feeling a lot better, you're having daily bowel movements, you're sleeping well at night, we can start treating then. So this is where we are building our game plan. We look at how do we build it? We look at our health history. We look at the health history of our parents. We look at our symptoms. There are very specific symptoms for different types of parasites. We look at our diagnoses, what we have been diagnosed with in the past. And then our students that I work with, they also send me pictures of the parasites they're passing, they're eliminating. So they're using an oxygen type therapy to do enemas, and they are releasing parasites. And so if the worms are short and fat, like they're wider but they're flat, they're flukes. If they're long and skinny like a noodle, then they're going to be roundworms. If they're long but they're flat like a ribbon, they're going to be tapeworms. So that's another wonderful indication. You can take the parasites and send them in for a stool test, but what's so ridiculous is that many people have shared with me they've done that and they don't even look at it. I think that what they do is they just dump the sample in, they remove all the fiber and everything from it, maybe with a machine. They might look at the liquid and they do not inspect it like they should. So you can try, but we have not had success with having stool tests show the parasites that we have. So by examining what types of parasites come out of you, and if you would like to know what they look like, I've got a few blog posts on livediseasefree.com. You can just look at all the different topics. There's flukes, tons of fluke pictures. Some of them are liver, some of them are intestinal. I don't know which is which, but they're definitely big enough. You know, there could be some that are blood flukes too, but you'll see that there's also roundworms, and you can look at all of them. They're disgusting, but I mean, they're clean, so there's not a lot of stool on them, but it's still, worms are disgusting to look at, but that's what's making us sick. And of course, small parasites too. So again, we look at your health history, the health history of your parents, your symptoms, your diagnoses, also what you're passing, and then energy test results. So because we don't have good stool tests, we can go to a chiropractor that does applied kinesiology, or we can go to a naturopath that does some kind of energy testing, either an advanced muscle testing, or maybe they have a machine like Vega machine, EAV machine, or an acupuncture meridian assessment machine. So those are some different types of machines that they use to look for changes in your energy when you bring the correct treatment into your energy field. So it's like biophysics, and if it's a good practitioner, they have a lot of experience, they're able to bring a remedy, whether it's a herb or a parasite drug, into your energy field, and they can tell if it strengthens you or weakens you or doesn't make any difference. And so they can give you the list, and that is helpful. It's a piece of information. It is not an exact science, but it is definitely helpful. So that's how we build our game plan to treat. And then while we're treating, we definitely use a combination of strategies. So we definitely did the prep work, so we were feeling better, so we tolerate the drugs and the treatments better, so we can treat more aggressively. We're not going to have we want to avoid Herxheimer reactions, but we have to understand, like, this is a golden nugget I'm sharing with you, is that if you think you have parasites and you're going on these forums and you're just trying like one drug and you're messing around with like dosages, you're not sure what you're doing, you're not going to get well. I promise you, you're not going to get well, because it's not that easy. I have worked with hundreds and hundreds of people that are really sick, and the parasite drugs are helpful. The antimicrobial herbs are helpful. The oxygen therapies are helpful, but any one of them on their own will not cure you if you have chronic disease, because the burden is just too big. Our students are passing like upwards of 200 worms. And you think, no, Pam, that's not possible. Like, how is that possible? Well, your intestines would be the surface area of at least a double tennis court. So visualize a double tennis court. And just think how many worms you could fit on there. These little worms, even if they're 3 feet long and they're squiggled up together, how many worms could you fit in there? You can fit a lot of worms in there. And yes, people have so many worms that I don't even understand how they could still be alive with what they're passing. So when people have taken, they usually test well for at least 3 to 5 parasite drugs. When you're treating, if you want to recover, there's a synergistic effect of combining parasite treatments together. So if you have roundworms and you take one roundworm medication, you're probably not going to clear those roundworms. You have to take 2 or 3 roundworm medications. Plus, you have to realize that the medications will probably only treat the adult form of the worm. So then how are you going to treat the larva, the immature form? So then maybe you need to use some herbs to treat the larva, or you use some other parasite drugs to treat the larva, plus a few to treat the worm. So again, it's parasite drugs plus herbs. Plus, when you're taking these parasite drugs, some parasites are dying and others are just like moving away from the poison. They're moving out of the small intestine, moving down into the large intestine, but they're still alive. So we can use the oxygen therapy to do an oxygen enema to release them from the large intestine. So a lot of the parasites like to live in the small intestine. We can't reach that with an enema, so that's why we need to be using things orally, where we're swallowing the parasite drugs, and we need to use them. We need to be dealing with what's living in the large intestine. We also have to consider the central nervous system. Even if we've had migraines, if we are over 50 years old, if we have neurological symptoms, if they found lesions in our central nervous system, I shared last week how parasites cause lesions in the central nervous system. This is known in science. So then we have parasites in the central nervous system. So which parasite drugs will cross the blood-brain barrier, right? Which parasite drugs will be metabolized by the liver? A lot of these parasites like to live in the liver. Tapeworms do, flukes do, Babesia does also, and I'm sure many others. So if our liver enzymes go up while we're treating more aggressively, we have to protect the liver to make sure, and we can, it's very fine, it's safe, but we have to be, these are all things we need to consider. So these are challenges, these are things that we need to consider. So we're dealing with worms that can lay like hundreds and hundreds, like some of the roundworms can lay like 100,000 eggs in a day. So like it's daunting. And so like you've got to have a really clear system of treating, a cycle where you're just hitting them, taking a break, hitting them again, taking a break, hitting them. So you give them a chance to hatch and then hit them again and hit them again. Because if you've got, like 10,000 eggs that are laid and then you've, who knows how many of them hatched, right? And then you are killing some of those adults off, but then they've all laid a bunch of eggs. So it's pretty wild. And this is the stuff that I don't even think a lot of veterinarians know, because when I treat our animals and we're giving them one dose, I know for sure that for my horses, when they get one shot of ivermectin or one shot of a different drug, that's not clearing all the parasites out of my horse. I know that we do it more regularly. It's probably helpful to maybe clear out a few smaller ones, but it's definitely not eradicating the parasites like I believe that we should be doing. And so this is where it's just a skill that is not understood. And there's intention behind this, because they don't want to treat parasites, because if they treat parasites, we won't need the cancer industry, we won't need the MS industry, we won't need the arthritis industry, and on and on and on. And we will save multi-trillions of dollars. We will have doctors. We're in Canada and we don't even have doctors. It's so hard to find a doctor here, and it's so expensive. You have to wait so long. Our system is in really bad shape, but that's because we are doing it completely wrong. All right, so let's carry on. As we are treating the parasites, we want to manage the die-off, right? So this is where the enemas really help. We can take a binder if we need to, but in our program, in our Live Disease-Free plan, we are not, like our students are not expecting to have big, strong Herx reactions or die-off reactions, or they call them detox reactions. A detox reaction, I don't really understand what that would be, because like, sure, if you've had food poisoning, you might have a detox reaction, but when you are treating parasites or just in a normal day to day, your body is detoxing all the time. It's always cleaning, house cleaning, right? The blood, the liver is always working. So what those reactions that we would think are detox reactions that people might have when they're treating are really, you might be using a treatment that is aggravating an infection. It might not be the right treatment for the parasite you're dealing with, and so we call it angry worm syndrome. Or it might be that you're treating so aggressively that you are killing off a lot of parasites and your immune system is not able to deal with it as well. But we do know, though, that parasites have at least 17 different ways that have been documented in science that they cause immune dysfunction and inflammation. When they are alive, a lot of times they're blind to our immune system. Our immune system, and you might be wondering, like, why do I have so many parasites? Like, why doesn't my immune system deal with it? Shouldn't I be feeling like I'm next to death if I have 200 worms inside of me? Well, these parasites have ways to make themselves blind to your immune system. And when they start to die, then that protection is no longer there. And then the immune system recognizes them and goes, oh my gosh, what is this? We need to go after it. They call in the other soldiers, and it's a full-on war with higher inflammation. So all these things we have to consider, right? So that's why the prep phase is so important. your practitioner you work with should really know that the prep phase is vital for success. Just starting to treat is a recipe for disaster, because you're just going to be laying on the couch feeling like you were hit by a truck, and you can have worse neurological symptoms. You'll have to stop. It's just not even worth it. So again, layering of approach of treating would be including parasite drugs and antimicrobial herbs and oxygen therapies. So I'll just quickly discuss there's a lot of different herbs. So you might have heard of Mimosa pudica. You may have heard of wormwood and cloves and black walnut. Those are 3 that are often in formulas for treating parasites. Myrrh, frankincense. There are quite a number. Garlic is really, really antimicrobial. It's very helpful, especially the raw garlic chopped up on a spoon. So there's all these different herbs. There's grapefruit seed extract. There's olive leaf. There's also oil of oregano. There's a number of different antimicrobial herbs. There's all of the lime herbs, cryptolepis, a number of them there. So there are lots of wonderful antimicrobial herbs. Some of them will be more effective for parasites you're dealing with, and whether it's Lyme or Mycoplasma or whatever types of protozoa or small parasites you're dealing with. But the herbs are more helpful for the smaller parasites. The parasite drugs are more helpful for the larger parasites, but the herbs can also help the larvae of the larger parasites. Larvae are the immature forms of the large parasites. And then the oxygen therapies will just be a different way of hitting them, because our body uses oxidative free radicals to go after. They're called free radical oxygen species that go after parasites also. So our body uses oxygen, and oxygen can be really helpful in conjunction with the other 2 types. So long-term prevention, let me talk about the parasite drugs too. So there's a number of parasite drugs. So common ones there's albendazole, and that one works more systemically. There is mebendazole, which is similar. They're both for roundworms, more so. I think albendazole also is for tapeworms, some tapeworms. It can be a little bit helpful for flukes also, but mainly roundworms. It works systemically. It does cross a blood-brain barrier. And then mebendazole would be more of a safer drug for children or for people that are healthy that just want to treat roundworms. Then there is also ivermectin, which treats a wide variety of different types of parasites, also small roundworms. There is also, and the albendazole, ivermectin together is a more synergistic effect. There's a better killing effect. These drugs are very safe when they're used properly, but they have to be used properly, and you want to use them effectively, right? You want to use an effective killing dose. There's also Alinea, which is nitazoxanide, which is a very popular parasite drug. It does treat a wide variety of different parasites. It's helpful for flukes, not ideal for flukes, but somewhat helpful, but also for roundworms and for possibly some tapeworms, fungal also, and smaller parasites. So it's more of a broad spectrum parasite drug, but it's not going to just cure you just taking one drug like that. I wish it was. I would tell you if it was, but it just doesn't work that way. So then there is also praziquantel, which is really helpful more for the tapeworms and the flukes, the flatworms. The flukes cause a lot of inflammation, like edema, swelling, pain. They're terrible. They're very, very nasty parasites that cause a lot of pain and inflammation in the body. So praziquantel is helpful for that. There's triclabendazole also for these flatworms like the flukes. And things like myrrh, like I've been learning that myrrh I think it's in Egypt, they have a drug that's derived from myrrh. And so it has anti-fluke properties for liver fluke and blood fluke. I don't think it would cure flukes on its own, but I found that quite fascinating that myrrh is helpful for babesia also, which is common with MS. but also for flukes. And a lot of people that have chronic disease have flukes. I did not know how common they were. I thought they were in other countries, but they're even in our lakes. They're in our like freshwater lakes in British Columbia, Canada. Swimmer's itch is a blood fluke. My son had terrible breakout of welts on his legs from swimmer's itch. And this was years and years ago. And I just thought it was a bacterial infection. I did not know. And years later with doing all my research, I'm like, what? That's a blood fluke? So some of them can get past the immune system, right? And they could start to reproduce. And, when you're young, you don't really notice it if you're fairly healthy and active. So my son is. So I just told him, I said, make sure to keep an eye out for symptoms, because if it is a blood fluke, they're definitely going to affect the bladder in time. And he had a really bad case of flukes, like really like the welts were like that big on his leg, tons of them, gross. So those are some of the parasite drugs. There are other ones. There's niclosamide, which is also for tapeworms. I'm trying to think what other ones. There's quite a number of them. There's a lot of our students that have a type of malaria, Babesia protozoa, and is quite common. So Borrelia causes Lyme disease. That's also common. That's more of a bacteria. And there's liposomal herbs that we would use, like blends. Like it's like an antibiotic, but it's herbs and they're liposomal. So talk about that with your doctor for treating the smaller parasites. And then also there are the Babesia malaria type parasites that are like a protozoa, which are really awful. They infect your red blood cells. They cause a lot of the vascular issues. So with MS, I've done a talk about how they believe that MS is more of a vascular disorder than an autoimmune disorder. We get microbleeds. We have all kinds of issues with our blood vessels. And that is for a lot of people that have these parasites that affect our red blood cells. And then we get clumping of red blood cells, and then we get little brain bleeds or broken capillaries. So that's a really big problem with multiple sclerosis, a big cause. So we might test well for hydroxychloroquine, or this is where your doctor can do a test. There's an Armin lab test. You can test for some of these, like for the Lyme disease infections. And if you test positive for Babesia, then there is Difenaquine. That's one newer drug. Atovaquone is an older drug. I've seen combinations of those can be helpful. If you also just want to use herbs, you can try, again, the diet, decreasing, because again, these parasites love sugar. So when you make them less happy in your body, and then you could possibly use that oxidizing agent plus artemisinin, plus there's some, it's called ozonated myrrh. There's some different formulas where they bubble ozone through herbs, and that brings a lot of different healing properties that weren't there before they bubbled ozone through. So there are so many different wonderful treatments that we have at our disposal to deal with these parasites. And of course, it's never just about popping a pill or taking a herb. As we are feeling better, it's really important to start to take back your mobility, to be getting the circulation going, to be getting sunshine, to be balancing your life, managing your stress, I should say. Sometimes we can't balance it totally, but manage it. But all of these lifestyle factors are really important. We can't just, and the heavy metal detox is really important. So this is all part of the Live Disease-Free plan. We do liver, gallbladder flushes because the parasites like to live in the liver, gallbladder meridian. So all of these things are critical to, if we really want to get to an amazing place with our health. So I'm not talking about kind of alleviating some of the symptoms, but I'm talking about going back to a time when you felt really, really good. So I'm going to take your questions right now. All right. Hello, Abu. Hi, James. Lyme disease. Do you think you have Lyme disease, Abu? You've been tested for it. Same as your mom recovering like yourself from ME, or your mom and you were recovering. So I had MS, but looks like you had ME. That's a different disease. Hi, Karina. MS after treating parasites. I don't know what that means. She walks and is bedridden. Maybe you can explain that a little bit more clearly. You're very welcome, Sharon. Hi, Dan. You sent in a stool sample to a specialist lab, but he found no parasite issues, but had much higher measures of Candida albicans. Could this be the basis of my MS issues? We thought that in the early days when I was first diagnosed with MS, all 4 doctors, they talked about Candida. And it's true that we have Candida symptoms, right? I didn't have a lot of Candida symptoms, so I didn't have fingernail, toenail, I didn't have vaginal yeast infections, so I had gut issues, right? I didn't really have dandruff, but I had gut issues, but I thought I had Candida. And so what we have found now, because we've been doing this for 35 years, is that yes, when we have chronic disease, we always have fungal overgrowth, but it appears that the fungus is not the main cause. Fungus is kind of an opportunist. Fungus loves to clean up garbage. So if you have a lot of other parasites, so the bigger worms are depositing their waste material in you, they're depositing their dead bacteria in you, and fungus is gobbling that up, and it's a perfect environment for fungus. Plus, if we're having a high carbohydrate diet, so fungus, and then also being on antibiotics, then the Candida is no longer just present, but it actually becomes more populated. But we just haven't found that people that are treating Candida notice significant improvements with their health like they do when they're passing these really big worms. It's really it's instantaneous when you pass these big worms. We still treat Candida, absolutely. We do a cycle. It's approximately a month long, and we'll treat the larger parasites, the worms and the protozoa for about 14 days, 10 to 14 days. Then we will treat fungus, Candida, or mold, whatever you energy test well for with respect to Candida treatments versus mold treatments. 10 days of that. Then we do a break week. And during the break week, then if students have a lot of symptoms of the Lyme infections, they might have been working with a Lyme litter doctor, they might have done some testing and it showed positive. They might use, during their break week, they will use more of the herbs that are formulated to treat those infections. Plus they will use the oxidizing agent, that oxygen therapy, they will be drinking that. And then at different times, they'll be doing enemas throughout the treatment part. And if they've had more of Candida, they don't have symptoms of Lyme, which most of them do. If it's just Candida, then they will use just the herbs that are geared more towards fungus. But just remember that with herbs, there's a lot of overlap. They will treat sometimes bad bacteria and fungi, right? Lyme and fungus all at the same time. But there's definitely some herbs that are more geared towards treating certain types of parasites. So rickettsia is definitely one of the Lyme infections. Right, and if it doesn't mean with that parasite stool test, I apologize, but that's just the way that our world is right now. The very best parasitologists have said that probably maybe 10% of the parasites you have will be detected in your stool. And I don't even think that is the case, because with me, it's always come back clear. I mean, they did find one time a protozoa, Blastocystis hominis, treated it, didn't notice any difference. That was the only thing. And I have passed some very big worms. All right. And then another question, I have Lyme, Bartonella babesia, biofilm, and Coxsackie virus. Would this help with any of these? Yes. So with any people that come to me that have had, let's say, a Lyme diagnosis, they've worked with Lyme litter doctors, they've used antibiotics and they're still sick, then they come work with us. And if you don't treat the large parasites first, you will never be able to recover from the Lyme infections, because Dr. Alan MacDonald even showed that in some of these worms, they carry Borrelia. They could carry other. We know that some of them carry Rickettsia. They could carry other ones, but this just hasn't been studied enough. So if you just focus on treating small, then you'll find that you never clear it because the big worms keep infecting you with a smaller parasite. So we treat from big to small with each treatment cycle. We don't just go treat big for several treatment cycles and then treat small. We treat big, then small, then take a break. We're treating the smallest, then we circle back and we're treating big to small, big to small, big to small. And we just keep hitting them, take a break, hitting them, take a break, hitting them, take a break. And that is the best way to do it because you're kind of working with their life cycles, you're working with adult young forms, and you can't take the pressure off of them. And if you don't treat the big, you'll never clear the small. So, all right, let's see if there's any there. Hi, Sasha. Can you share the parasitic medications actually that kill the adult stages, that kill the larvae and the eggs? Well, that would be a really big talk. So this is something you can look up on your own. It takes a little bit of work, but I shared a bunch of different parasite drug names. And so most of the parasite drugs treat the adult form and most of the herbs would treat the young ones, the larvae, not necessarily the eggs. Sometimes the eggs are dormant and they're pretty strong, like they have a pretty strong protective shield on them. But the immature form, the larva, very often the herbs and the oxygen therapy would treat the large and the young. And so that part of it, I can't, we would be here for a very long time to talk about all of those. But that's something you can look into. And it really depends on what kind of parasites you have, right? You don't want to just know all the parasite drugs, what treats adult, what treats young, because you might not need them all. You just need to know for what you're dealing with. Hi, Diane. Hi, Brittany. You have greater than 10 white matter lesions. The doctor thinks it's MS, but it's 20 months to get into neuro to confirm. I'm not waiting that long. You're in Alberta. You're breastfeeding. Can I still do this? Yes, you can, Brittany, but while you're breastfeeding, you really can't treat. Like you have to protect, and I don't know how old your baby is, but it's like, for example, I had my third child. This was after my MS diagnosis, after I had put it in remission. And so there's things you can do right now that you can be really discouraging those parasites in your body so that they're not going to be causing, and usually when women are pregnant or they're nursing, then we don't seem to have as much of an MS issue then either. But what's really important is that you can learn all of this, you can apply what you can, and then as soon as you stop nursing, you will be able to treat right away because you'll know exactly what you're going to do, and just make sure you don't get any MS flares or MS attacks, because that's usually, like for me with my son when he was 6 months old, that's when I got the MS attack. And actually I was still nursing him, which was awful because I had to put him on formula, and he didn't do very well on formula because I was, just on the verge of MS, so I wasn't probably the healthiest. What herbs treat and kill eggs and larvae? So Sasha, you would not use herbs right now. You just want to protect your baby. I don't know how old your child is that you're nursing, but you just nurse as long as you want to, as long as you need to. But you can definitely change your diet. So you can, and with your diet, you can, if you want, you can have some carbs, but this is where you can just test it to go as low as you can. I mean, there's people that are even on a carnivore diet that have children and their kids are healthy. So you can follow a version of the Live Disease-Free diet where you're really decreasing the processed carbs, like really decrease the sugar from fruit and the processed carbs and just have a little bit of carbs. That will help a lot already to slow things down. But just, you've got to learn the skill. Like, unfortunately, you're in Canada, so You're not going to find a doctor that's going to help you in Canada at this time. It's heartbreaking, but it's the truth. In British Columbia, the neurologists, the naturopaths can write prescriptions for parasite drugs, but in Alberta, they can't. But in BC, the naturopaths, they're kind of scared to write prescriptions because their college does not want them to treat parasites. It's awful. So just what I would do for all of you that are like, oh my gosh, Pam, I didn't know that my autoimmune disease, my allergies, my cognitive function, all of these issues I'm dealing with is parasites. Make sure to watch my masterclass training, because on that, I go deeper into these steps, and then you can go start on the diet. If you're ready and you're like, Pam, I need to treat, I need a plan, I don't have a doctor that understands this and you need our support, then you can book a time to chat with me to make sure it's a good fit for you. This is one of the most important skills that you'll have in your life, because if you don't have your health, not much else matters, because it's one of your greatest, it is your greatest asset, right? If you don't have your health, there's just so much you can't do. Like as a mom, I would have never been able to raise my children, wouldn't be able to be so active with my grandchildren, taking care of my parents in their elderly age. Like, it's so incredibly important. So meds, true suppression. So yes, the MS drugs suppress the immune system. So AP, you said you have flukes. It's very understandable that you do. It's very, very common. And let's see here. What about biofilms? Do you destroy them too? Well, yes. So there's good biofilms and bad biofilms, but a lot of the bad microbes do hide under the bad biofilms. So there are certain strategies that we do use to treat biofilms also. How do you figure out a treatment plan, what to do? Again, we look at your health history. So my students I work with, for my students, they didn't just get parasites overnight. Their microbiome was out of balance very often before the age of 10, significantly. And so we kind of look to see, what their life was like, their parents, what kind of diseases, conditions they had. So their parents' health history, their health history, their symptoms, the diagnosis that they've had, their energy test results, what types of parasites they're passing, like from doing those enemas, and also what their energy test results are. So all of that together is enough to start a really good plan. And there's going to be adjustments that we make throughout the plan. But that is really the best that we have. I don't believe that we're going to have very, very good tests in our lifetime, because it is so censored. It is so intentionally ignored that it's going to take a very, very long time for the really good tests to be developed. We've got some DNA testing. Yes, we have some DNA tests you can do, but they're not very good. So you can spend $1,000 on a test, but it's not going to give you the information you need. So I say, don't bother. There's a lot of things that we can do that, like we can spend $6,000 to $10,000 on testing, and it really does not help us to understand what we're dealing with. Hi, Jada. What's the difference between artemisinin and wormwood? So there's two different types of wormwood. There's sweet Annie wormwood, which is the extract is artemisinin. And then there's another wormwood, and I can't remember the exact name of it, but it's just the one that's common in health food stores. And they're both good. I've used the other one that's more common in health food stores. I found it really helpful years ago. But again, it's not going to cure you, but they're both good. Artemisinin is what's really in a lot of the scientific literature for things like malaria and babesia and things like that. So I'm not sure if one is better than the other, but you can try either or and see, but it would have to be with like a few other things, because it's not going to be enough on its own. Hi, Sabrine. What do you think of Paragon anti-parasitic? So if you are a super healthy person and you just get a little bit of gas and constipation sometimes, then you could go to a health food store and you can find a blend of herbs like this. They usually have black walnut and wormwood and cloves and possibly some other different types of antiparasitic herbs in it. You will pass parasites, but if you have chronic disease and you take those herbs, you'll notice that you still have the disease. That is not going to be enough. So the herbs will not be enough to treat the very large worms. So our students sometimes pass 3-foot worms. So they're not going to pass, you're not going to necessarily pass the 2-foot or 3-foot worms. The herbs are not going to be effective enough for that. Or if you have parasites that have moved into your tissues or organs or your central nervous system, it's not going to be enough for that. But herbs are helpful for smaller parasites located in your gut. I'm going to do a colonic cleanse and to do a trial with this supplement. You can, I don't know what you're dealing with, but it's probably not going to be the best. It's okay. But if you're dealing with chronic disease, it's not going to do what you want it to do. Rob, your live blood analysis shows parasites finally, and every other test for 2 years, nothing. And I am now muscle wasting and nonstop twitching in my legs. How can you help me? So Rob, what you do is you just watch my masterclass training. There I talk in a lot more detail about the steps. I also share, pardon me, let me grab some water here for a second. Where's my water? I've been talking a lot all day. So with the Watch My Masterclass training, you will learn the steps we take to recover. You'll hear a lot of case studies of people that have recovered. Then if you're like, yes, this sounds really good, I want to talk to Pam, I want to make sure it's a good fit for me, I've got questions, then you'll fill out a form. Then when you fill out the form, just make sure you add enough information so we know that you are ready, that you're serious. Submit the form, and then you will be able to book a time in my calendar. Before we meet, it's important that you listen to a second thing, which is the coach-a-thon. And the coach-a-thon goes into a lot more detail. It's like, how do we get access to the treatments, and how do we find practitioners, and how do we do this and that? And the nice thing is when you go through that before you and I meet, then you're going to have better questions for me. We can just focus more on looking at, and that form you're filling out really helps me to get to know your health history, what you've been through, what you've done, so that I understand how we can best support you. So then you'll have good questions for me, and then you can see if it's a good fit. And if it's a good fit for you, I'd be honored to support you. So yes, the live blood analysis is kind of cool. You can see things under the microscope, but the biggest base camp of your problem, Rob, is in your gut, is in your intestines. So they flow out of your intestines into your blood and into the central nervous system and into our tissues and organs. But the biggest concentration of the parasites is always the intestines. So we definitely want to be working on that. You find this fascinating. You're very welcome. Thank you, Brittany, for sharing. You're amazing. Sabrina, just a couple more questions here. Oh, we've gone over time here anyhow. So what I'd like you to do is just type in your questions, your comments. I'm going to let you go because we've gone over the time, but I did want to really quickly talk about some challenges that we face. And number one is resistance from our medical system. It's definitely a lot better than it was when I started supporting people over 10 years ago. I had people crying, leaving their doctor's office. Like, you have no idea the stories. Like one neurologist said, if you were my daughter, I would pin you down to the ground and I'd inject the MS drugs into you. Like, that's how bad it was. Not all doctors, but there were a couple that were just like brutal. But people would often leave offices in tears because their doctor was just so negative and closed-minded, and that's really unfortunate. So things have changed, not 100%, but they definitely have. You know your doctor, like sometimes you can just kind of go fishing and you just basically just share a few, just ask a couple of questions, and kind of get a sense of if they're open or not. And if they're open, whether it's a chiropractor, a nurse practitioner, functional medicine doctor, acupuncturist, share this information with them. I created a really great guide. I haven't put it up yet. I did a blog post last week about lesions, how parasites cause lesions, and I'm putting together a really great resource that you can print off, and that'll give you some good questions. The only way things are going to change is if we have thousands of people talking to practitioners, not just me talking to you. We want change. I've got kids and grandkids. I don't want the system to keep going like this, right? And of course, I'm teaching my children like how to not get chronic disease, but there's so many other people that need to be helped that don't know this. So the first step is just to share this with practitioners, with the practitioners that are willing to listen, that are going to be positive and not going to be, if they're negative, if they're condescending, don't waste your time. Don't waste that energy. Die off symptoms. This is something where you really have to work with somebody. You can't do this on your own. You really can't. If you're healthy and you go to the health food store and you get some herbs, you can do that on your own. But that's not going to get you well if you're sick. So doing the real treating, you need to work with somebody. If you don't have specific help, we are here for you. Also, feeling alone and unsupported. It's really hard. A lot of our students, they have beautiful families that don't believe in this. They think that they want their spouse or their family member to be on these immunosuppressive drugs. They really believe with all of their heart that that is what's the best thing for them. So it's really hard when you're alone and you don't have that support from your loved ones. And so that's why our community is so incredibly helpful for people to feel connected and like you're not going crazy, right? That what you feel is in your gut, that's right, is true. And so we have a very strong supportive community. And also the dietary adjustments can be kind of hard at the beginning because these parasites make us crave carbohydrates like a drug addiction very often. So, and then sometimes we're following the diet. We think we're following it well from my guidelines that I have on the website, but maybe you're not following it properly. It doesn't take much. It takes very, very little to feed these parasites and make your symptoms worse. So these are all reasons, these are all challenges why it's really nice to have a proven step-by-step plan. Proven meaning that people that have had incurable diseases have recovered. You'll have this skill for life. It's like taking a little mini course, but you're applying it into your life. You're recovering, you're getting on with your life, and then you will have that skill for the rest of your life. And I just smile, like I'm not on social media very often, but if I have to go on for work, and then all of a sudden I see one of my students and she's working out and she's like a health coach, and I just smile. Like 8 years ago, she had MS and she looks beautiful and healthy and strong. Some of our students they're writing books, they have podcasts, they're health coaches, wellness clinics. So that's another way that we're bringing change, is that as we recover, we want to help others to recover. We want to help others to experience what we have. So make sure that you get the help that you need, because you are a healthy person. You just have parasites. You can get back to who you were before. You just have to treat the parasites well. You have to work with somebody who has experience, who has knowledge, who will support you and walk you through step by step. So again, if you like what I share, please like, share, and subscribe. It really helps this to get out to more people. And then also type your comments in the question box. And other than that, I will see you on the next live event next week. Take care. Bye-bye for now.